Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now what do you get when you spend just over £100 on a used MSI Nightblade M1 gaming PC? According to the box you get a lean, mean, gaming machine with Nahimic audio enhancer, gamer graphics and silent storm cooling. Cracking open the box and the first thing I pulled out of it was the original documentation, which is always a nice yet unexpected inclusion. I don't know what a graphics card support sponge is, but it kind of sounds like it's for emotional support. I'm so terrible at running games and I just don't know what to do. I've got to say that my immediate impressions are pretty positive. The Nightblade M1 looks fantastic on the surface. The small form factor case with the red accents really stands out. It looks good at any angle, actually, and while I appreciate the placement of the power button and front USB ports, I can't help but notice what looks like an entire desert's worth of dust inside here. Interestingly, my dog hasn't rushed over to sniff it, so I can rule out pet hair, and there's no aroma of stale smoke, so I'm guessing the dust in here is just a build-up of your standard dead skin cells and bacteria. With the electric air duster on standby, it was time to take off the top panel and oh my goodness, I wish I had left it where it was. I'm still not getting any horrible or unwelcome smells from this computer, but it sure looks familiar to cigarette smoke, dust or whatever it's officially called. The dark hue gives it away, but most of it seems to have been caught by the graphics card and the wad of cables that run underneath it. A quick blast from the air duster will remove the majority of the loose stuff, and then I can take the GPU out and clean it more thoroughly with a cloth and brush. First though, I've got to do this in slow motion because it is incredibly satisfying to use this thing and watch it in action. Honestly, I probably should have moved it further away from the fence because my usually bald next door neighbour now has a full head of thick brown hair. The quick initial cleanup definitely helped, and a quick glance at the components underneath the card tells me that there really isn't much grime down there. The unique layout of the system has meant for the past 7 years or so the graphics card fan has acted as a bit of a barrier to the dust, sucking a lot of it through the fan as well. With that out of the system and polished up a bit, I want to talk a little more about the PC's layout and design. MSI were clearly going down the compact space-saving route with this, and I think they've utilised the interior space really well. From the way the cooler and card sits in here to the way the drive bays can be accessed from the top, without the need for any fiddly disassembly, apart from unscrewing a few screws of course, but that's not exactly difficult. The system is in pretty good condition to be fair, and with the dust out of the way, it's ready to be tested. Now I wasn't expecting solid specifications, especially considering the price, but I do hope to make this a little better with a couple of upgrades over the coming days. The 350 watt PSU might hinder that a little bit, but it does have external power connectors and it's bronze rated, so we do have something to work with. Heading straight into the BIOS reveals a once legendary unlocked Intel chip, the Pentium G3258. This 20th anniversary processor overclocked like a champ, even with a stock cooler, and if you've been here for a while, you may remember me going on about it years ago. I used to use this and recommend it all the time. The thing is, with the version of the B85i board that's in this system, which I believe is a slightly tweaked OEM version of the standard offering, I can't actually tweak the clock speeds, which is a shame because this thing does best when it is overclocked. Even after finding and flashing a later BIOS that was dated 2016, we're still locked down, at least from what I can see, and I can't find any options that allow me to tweak anything. That's a shame because we can't utilise the full potential of this 20th anniversary chip. I guess that might be seen as sort of irrelevant for the G3258 anyway, overclocking that is, because while it may have been able to give more powerful processors a good run for their money back in 2014, the 2 cores and lack of hyper-threading can cause some pretty hefty stutters and slowdowns. This specific machine also comes with 8 gigs of RAM in single channel mode and a GT740. I guess that GTX sticker was a lie. Now this was an okay combination 7 or 8 years ago, but it's one that will prove a little bit sluggish now, which is a shame, but it's nothing that I didn't expect. I could really use that support sponge right now. That said, there is however room for upgrade, hopefully physically as well, considering the size of this case, and selling off the Pentium G3258 and GT740 would be a good place to start to try and get a little bit of money back beforehand. Thankfully, socket 1150 processors don't cost all that much these days, with the i5 and i7s from that range still being somewhat capable. I don't know what graphics card to stick in here yet, but something that isn't too thirsty would be a pretty good bet, although we do have a couple of 6+2 pin power connectors. I still don't want to push the PSU in here too much though, considering it is only 350 watts. The G3258, as I've probably said numerous times now, is still one of my favourite Intel chips despite the fact that it hasn't aged very well, and the GT740 would have been suitable for entry-level builds back in the day as well, especially the 2GB GDDR5 version that we've got here. Before I get to work on some upgrades, I thought we'd take a quick look at how this card performs when paired with more modern components. That way, I won't have to make a separate video for it because, in all honesty, I don't really need to. Now, like other 700 series cards, it lacks DX12 support, so we are limited to older games or ones that can use Vulkan, and we have to stick with lower resolutions most of the time. I tested a handful of games once again, including a couple of the games that I tested earlier, albeit with slightly different settings, and I was going to include Fortnite as one of the titles it could play acceptably, but it crashed, so that was that. That said, if you can find one of these things for less than 50 quid, and you've got an older games collection that needs tackling with a limited budget to do so, one of these won't break the bank, but I'd certainly suggest going with something like a GTX 950 as the minimum. It's one of the cheapest DX12 Nvidia cards around right now, and it really doesn't cost that much more than a GT740, at least here in the UK. The 950 is probably the lowest end card I could recommend at this point in time because of modern API support. Now, I'd like to hear your suggestions as to what I should do with this thing down below. Obviously we are a little bit limited unless I can find a PSU that can fit in here and provides more power. I'm thinking perhaps an i5 or an i7 as well as a GTX 960 or 1050. Maybe we'll upgrade it once on a set budget of like £100 or £150, and then we'll upgrade it again and sort of max it out as much as we can, so put an i5 in here first and then see how it does with an i7, perhaps compare the two as well. That might be something worth considering, but let me know what you think down below, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on the MSI Nightblade, both in terms of upgrade potential and how it is straight out of the box. As always, if you enjoyed this one, leave a like on it down below, leave a dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.